everyone, this is Julie Kagawa, and we are back with another character talk. Today we are discussing everyone's favorite broody, angsty prince, Ashelon Darkmere Talon, better known as Prince Ash of the Winter Court. Now, Ash was, and still remains, probably my favorite character in the Iron Face series, and when I was coming up with him, when I was writing The Iron King, I was inspired by a lot of anime and video games that I watched and played over the years. I was super into anime, and I loved all the brooding, angsty heroes. There is one scene in particular that I remember. There was an anime called Gundam Wing, and in this anime, the heroine, Relina, was trying to get one of the Gundam pilots to go to her party. She didn't know who he was. He was broody and mysterious, so she gave him an invitation to her birthday party. And he ripped it up in front of her and threw it on the ground, and of course she bursts into tears and asks him very tearfully why. And he answers, "Ome o korosu," which translates to, "I'll kill you." Does that sound familiar? It should. So yes, I was very, very influenced by all the anime and the video games when I was writing Ash. And in all of the characters, actually, Ash, Megan, Puck, and Grim, when I picture them even now, I don't picture them as, real life people. I picture them as anime characters, and that has been, that way from the very, very beginning. Now, one of the questions that comes up a lot about Ash is his relationship with his family, particularly his father. And that is complicated. Ash grew up never knowing his father. His father is unknown, and he didn't wonder about it, and none of his siblings did either. So in the Winter Court, Mab did what Mab would do, and you never wanted to question or wonder or confront her about any of these things unless you wanted to be a statue in her garden, in her ice garden forever and ever. So Mab was very volatile. She was very fickle. She had a bad temper, and you just didn't wonder about these things. There is even a line in The Iron Knight where Ash muses, when he's thinking back to his time at the Winter Court, "Wayward fae and even mortals she might take to her bed, but Mab shared her throne with no one." And that was very true. Mab was the queen. There was never a king. She was the sole ruler of the Winter Court. She wouldn't have it any other way. She was very jealous of her throne. She would not let anybody else rule with her. She was the one and only queen, and you just had to accept that. And that's the type of life that Ash grew up with. And his relationship with his siblings, Rowan and Sage, was even more complicated. When Ash was growing up, he actually had a better relationship with Rowan than he did with Sage, the eldest. Sage was always a little bit distant. He was the crown prince. He was the heir to the throne. Not that, Mab would ever relinquish it, ever. But he was the heir, so he was more formal. They were always cordial with each other, but Sage was always kept himself a little bit distant from Ash. It was Rowan who taught Ash the ins and outs of the Winter Court when he was smaller. So Rowan taught Ash how to survive the Winter Court. Unfortunately, Rowan had a very twisted, sadistic sense of humor and would often engage Ash in these terrible games and make him take part in these awful games of his. And that is how Ash learned some of the things that he did was from his middle brother, Rowan. It was Rowan who actually had Ash seduce and break the girl's heart that led to his curse later on down the road. That was Rowan's game that he had Ash do. Ash really wanted no part of it, but Rowan was always there antagonizing him, trying to get him to be cruel, trying to get him to be ruthless, and trying to teach him how to be a true winter prince. That changed, however, when Ash grew up a little bit and was suddenly Mab's favorite. So Ash was always Mab's favorite, and that became more apparent when he got older. And suddenly Rowan found himself kind of in the middle. He wasn't the heir, Sage was the heir. He wasn't the youngest and the favored, that was Ash. So now Rowan had all of these antagonistic feelings about his siblings, and really couldn't take it out on Sage, so he started blaming and hating Ash for taking Mab's attention away from him. And Mab did not help. Mab is a fairy queen. Everything that happened in her court had to be for her amusement, so she took great delight in making her sons compete with each other for her affection and for her approval. And Ash learned very quickly that his mother's approval came with a heavy price, and that Rowan really, really despised it when she favored him over his siblings. So he grew up in a very antagonistic court. So to protect himself, Ash learned to freeze out his emotions, to not let anything get to him, to never let anybody see when he was weak, when he was hurt. And that was all to protect himself from mostly his brother, from Rowan. And the reason Ash wasn't at court a lot in the later books was mostly because of Rowan and not wanting to be at court when Rowan was there, because Rowan would just constantly torment him. Now there is another question that comes up about Rowan and his hatred of Ash. And that question is, was Rowan ever in love with Ariella? But I don't want to get into that today because that is another video for another time. And speaking of Ariella, I know that Ash's commitment to Megan was kind of called into question in the fourth book, The Iron Knight, when Ariella is suddenly back in his life. Some have said that he wavered, that he wasn't sure, who he could choose, that he was only continuing his quest because he had to, because he had made a promise. And if he didn't continue his quest and try to keep his promise, that would undo him. And yes, all of that was true. Ash did waver. He was confused. This was his greatest love, his first love. Ariella was the very first person that he had ever loved in his life. And he didn't lose her by breaking up. They didn't break up. He lost her because she died. And that was devastating for him. And it almost completely broke him. And it started his feud with Ash. So it was a big, major deal when Ariella died. And he met Megan, and he started to heal, and he started to fall in love again. And when he made his oath to be with her and started on his quest, he knew that if he didn't complete it, he would be unraveled. It would break him, and he would, he might cease to be. But here's suddenly Ariella, who's back from the dead, and who is kind of not so subtly hinting that she is also in love with him and that he could be with her again if he wanted. So yes, there was a lot of inner turmoil, and there was a lot of confusion on his part. And I think that was normal for someone who has gone through something like that. But when he finally makes his choice, he tells Ariella that he can't be with her anymore. He chooses Megan, and he tells her that he will always love her, but that he's not in love with her anymore. And I think that is a big distinction, being in love with someone versus loving somebody. Ash will always love Ariella. He can't not love her, but he's in love with Megan, and he's sort of moved on. So yeah, he did struggle and he wavered a little bit, but in the end he made the right choice. He chose Megan. He went to the end of the world for her. He earned his soul, and that, I think, proved his love more than anything. So I hope that you have enjoyed this little insight into the mind of our Winter Prince. Now, next video, we are going to try to discuss the mysterious, elusive final member of the team, the the creature that no one can do without, but everybody kind of, doesn't know what to do with. The elusive, mysterious, infuriating, but absolutely essential Grimalkin. So, if you have anything that you want to know about Grimalkin, ask me in the comments below. I will try to answer. I can't promise to answer any questions you might have, because Grimalkin is Grimalkin. And that's all that anyone can say about him. But thank you all so much. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope you are enjoying the series. Leave a like and maybe hit that subscribe button if you are enjoying this content. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye!